5 answers on one surprise call can shape the medical record behind your VA money. Professor Lindquist studies how structured medical questions turn lived symptoms into usable evidence. Before we finish, we will build the same-day note that can expose a missing answer before the decision arrives.
An ACE call can supplement the record. VA says the acceptable clinical evidence process may let a provider review existing evidence instead of automatically bringing you in for an in-person exam.
Today we go deeper than the broad ACE explanation and focus on the examiner-initiated telephone interview, what it is not, and how to answer without inventing certainty.
Use this framework only for an examiner-initiated ACE interview. It is not for a scheduling reminder or treatment call. Identify the caller and the disability first. Ask for the examiner's name and organization. Capture the callback information and condition being reviewed. If the timing is unsafe or you cannot verify the call, use official contact information before sharing private details.
Answer from dates, symptoms, and records. The useful answer is not the most dramatic one. It connects onset with frequency. It also connects severity with treatment and functional impact without pretending memory is a chart.
Do not treat the call as a rating decision. The examiner gathers medical information. A VA decision maker weighs the full record later. A friendly tone is not approval, and a short call is not proof that the claim is weak.
Structured medical interviews compress a complicated history into defined fields. That is useful. Compression still creates risk. A veteran may answer the broad story, while the examiner needs one date, one frequency, or one functional limit. Listen for the field behind the question.
If you do not know an exact date, use the closest truthful anchor. It might be a month or season. It might be a deployment, treatment visit, or event that marks the change. A bounded estimate is more honest than a polished guess.
And separate the usual pattern from the worst event. Frequency and duration are different variables. Saying a symptom happened once at its worst does not explain what an ordinary week looks like.
Write the call note before memory fades. Record who called and which condition was discussed. Add what they asked and what you answered. Then name any record they said was missing. VAProfessorerica.com has free guides to organize those questions for VA or an accredited representative.
The question I keep coming back to is simple. If the call is supposed to fill a gap, how do you find the gap while you are still on the phone?
Before we keep going, one small favor that actually moves the needle. If this is landing for you, tap like, then subscribe and turn on the bell so you do not miss the rest. 2 taps, completely free, and it pushes this in front of more people who need it. The call targets one gap. That is what the telephone interview is usually trying to close.
The provider starts with the medical evidence already in the file. The call is not an invitation to retell every service event. It is a chance to make one incomplete part medically usable.
The call targets a gap. Think of the record as a bridge with one unfinished span. The examiner is not rebuilding the whole bridge. The examiner is testing whether that missing span can carry a medical conclusion.
Existing records remain the starting point. The provider may compare treatment notes with prior exams and test results. The provider may also compare medications with lay evidence. I call that the docking point. The call needs to dock with something already in the file.
Questions may track a disability questionnaire. The wording can feel repetitive or oddly specific. It may cover onset, flare frequency, or medication. It may also cover a documented range of motion, work limits, or a typical episode.
The examiner does not decide the claim. The examiner documents medical findings or an opinion. The rating activity applies the law and weighs the full record. That boundary matters because veterans often hear confidence in a voice and mistake it for an award.
And the opposite error is just as costly. A brisk call can sound dismissive even when the examiner already has most of what is needed. Duration is not a score, content is.
Precise answers make the record easier to use. Name the symptom, its pattern, and the real-world limit. My knee is bad is a conclusion. After 10 minutes standing, I shift weight and need to sit is observable information.
If the examiner asks for a date you cannot retrieve, do not improvise. Say, I do not remember the exact day. It was after the March treatment visit. That keeps the docking point attached to the record.
Routine. Until it isn't. One invented date can collide with a treatment note and make every later answer harder to interpret.
Caroline, what if the examiner asks beyond the condition? Answer relevant context, then clarify the connection. I can answer that, but can you tell me how it relates to the condition you are reviewing? The next scene builds the 5-answer grid that keeps that clarification useful.
Professor Lindquist, which 5 answers keep a focus call from turning into a fog of medical history?
Use a one-page grid, not a speech. Each row should answer a different clinical variable, and each answer should fit in 2 or 3 concrete sentences before the examiner asks a follow-up.
Put structure before details. A visible checklist keeps that discipline in front of you before the 5-answer grid.
5 answers before you pick up. Start with onset and the usual bad day pattern. Add frequency with duration. Finish with current treatment and functional limits. Those are not magic words. They are a compact index to your own evidence.
When did it start or change? Anchor the answer to a record when possible. Use a deployment period or injury. Use an urgent care visit, medication change, or the month symptoms became materially worse.
Erica, what happens on a typical bad day? Describe the sequence. For a migraine, that might begin with visual warning and pain. Nausea may follow. A dark room and hours of recovery may come next. Do not substitute the single worst attack for the usual pattern.
How often, how long, and how severe? 3 measurements, 3 answers. Twice a week is frequency. 2 to 4 hours is duration. I must stop work and lie down. Describe severity through function.
Treatment and functional limits complete the grid. Name what you actually use and how consistently you use it. Explain what changes and what does not return. Then describe limits at home and work without diagnosing yourself or guessing a measurement.
Keep the page beside the phone, but do not read it like testimony. It is a compass. If the examiner asks about sleep, find the row for frequency or treatment. Use the function row 2, then answer the precise question in your own words.
My instinct would be to bring every record and talk until the examiner stops me. That feels thorough. It also buries the 5 answers under a truckload of context.
Exactly. Completeness is not volume. Completeness means the required variables are answered and tied to credible examples. A shorter answer can be more complete because the examiner can place it correctly.
5 rows. No autobiography. Keep the exact medical record available for details you should not reconstruct from memory.
And if the question exposes a real missing document, mark it. Do not promise a diagnosis on the call. Record the gap so you can decide what relevant evidence belongs in the file.
The grid makes the call answerable. Before we get to the post-call audit, Caroline's next risk is the one that ruins careful preparation, knowing when an answer becomes a guess. Accurate beats impressive. 0 invented precision is the safest number on the call.
A veteran can be completely honest and still overreach by converting a memory into an exact date, a sensation into a diagnosis, or a rough limit into a measured angle. Accuracy includes admitting the boundary of memory.
Accurate beats impressive. The examiner needs information that can survive comparison with the file, not a performance that sounds certain for 10 minutes.
Ask which condition the caller is reviewing. If 2 conditions overlap, say which symptom you are describing and where the records discuss it. That clarification is not resistance, it protects the answer from landing in the wrong field.
This medical history training puts structure before detail. Use ordinary language and concrete examples. "I cannot concentrate" becomes more useful when you add, "I reread a page 3 times and still cannot retain it." The example shows function without turning you into your own examiner.
Do not guess dates, diagnoses, or measurements. "I do not know the exact date" is a valid answer. Follow it with the nearest truthful anchor and tell the examiner where the exact record may be.
"I used to think 'I don't know' ended the answer. It does not. I don't know the exact day, but it was after the medication change documented in April gives the examiner a search path.
Say when the record contains the exact answer. A lab value or medication dose belongs in the report. So does an imaging result or measured range? Direct the examiner there rather than rebuilding it from memory.
And keep privacy proportional. Verify the caller before sharing identifying information. An examiner may need claim-related facts. A surprise caller does not get unlimited personal history merely by using medical vocabulary.
Erica, the boundary is simple. Answer the relevant medical question. Clarify the condition and keep exact chart facts in the chart. Then capture what happened before the call dissolves into memory.
Take a measured range of motion. You can describe where pain begins, which movement stops, and what daily task becomes impossible. You should not invent degrees because you remember a clinician holding an instrument. The observation is yours. The measurement belongs to the examination record.
The same rule applies to mental health questions. Give the frequency and duration. Add a trigger if known, then explain recovery time and functional consequence. Do not upgrade ordinary distress into a diagnosis you were never given. Do not minimize a documented crisis because the caller sounds rushed. Stay with the actual pattern.
A good answer is like a shipping label, specific enough to reach the correct destination, not crowded with the contents of the entire house. Use 4 labels. Start with condition and pattern. Then add the example and record. If the examiner needs another box opened, the follow-up question will tell you which one.
Here is where the analogy breaks. A medical answer is not a package, and the examiner may need context you did not predict. Use the label only to organize the first answer, then listen and answer the actual follow-up.
The moment the call ends, the evidence clock is still running and memory is already editing the conversation.
This is the promised same-day note. It is not a transcript and it is not a new medical opinion. It is a factual call log you can compare with later correspondence and the eventual decision.
Build a same-day call record. Put the date and time at the top. Then record the caller's name and organization. Add the callback number and condition discussed. Facts first, interpretation later.
Record the date and time. Add the caller and condition discussed. Those 4 facts establish the event. If the call is later disputed or confused with a scheduling call, your note preserves what you understood in real time.
Questions asked and answers given come next. Use short pairs. Examiner asked how often headaches stop activity. I answered 2 or 3 times weekly, usually 2 hours in a dark room. Do not improve the answer after the fact.
Any missing record the examiner identified gets its own line. Write the record's name, date range, and why it matters. More evidence is too vague to act on. April neurology visit documenting frequency is searchable.
Then decide whether the gap is actually yours to fill. The provider may be able to find it in VA records. If a relevant private record is missing, use the secure submission method VA directs for your claim or work through an accredited representative.
Submit only relevant evidence through a secure path. Do not email medical records to an address supplied by an unverified caller. Do not flood the file with unrelated pages because one narrow record was discussed.
The money hook is indirect, but real. A missing medical fact can affect the rating evidence, and a misrating can affect compensation. The protection is not exaggeration. It is making the relevant fact easy to find.
Preserve confirmation of anything you submit. Keep the call note, the exact file, and the submission receipt together. Later, you can compare the decision's evidence list and reasoning with what actually happened.
Same day, 5 lines, 1 folder. That is the payoff. Not a perfect transcript, but a durable map for the audit.
Picture Andre, a 52-year-old Army veteran who receives a call about migraines while picking up his daughter. He verifies the caller, schedules a time when he can use his notes, and later records the 4 frequency questions the examiner asks. Preparation starts with creating a safe moment to answer.
Andre notices he gave the examiner the usual frequency but forgot to mention how often attacks force him to leave work. His treatment note already documents that consequence. He records the omission, locates the note, and preserves it with his call log instead of inventing a new statement from memory.
That is Professor Erica's practical verdict. The best post-call move is the smallest one that repairs a material gap. Verify the record and use the official secure path. Save confirmation, then wait for the written decision. Motion without a defined problem can make a clean file harder to read. Professor Lindquist, what does a veteran audit before the eventual decision turns this call into a closed record?
Audit the call note against 4 questions. Did it capture the correct condition and pattern? Did it capture function and any material omission? You are not grading the examiner. You are checking whether your own account stayed complete and accurate.
Audit 4 things, nothing ornamental.
Was the correct condition discussed? If the call shifted between diagnoses or overlapping symptoms, mark exactly where. Bureaucracy does love a label more than a human sentence.
Were frequency and functional limits captured? Read your call note as if you knew nothing else. Can you see how often the event occurs and how long it lasts? Can you see what treatment changes and which activity stops? If one variable never made it into the conversation, identify the supporting record rather than drafting a stronger memory. The goal is a traceable fact, not a late rewrite.
Is a material answer missing or misstated? Missing is not the same as wrong.
This clinical notes lesson gives us a useful frame. Structure determines whether details stay usable. A material omission changes how the condition is medically understood. It might change the pattern or severity marker. It might change treatment response or functional consequence. Minor wording differences are not automatically material.
No, let me tighten that. Preserve the note for the later decision review. If your own answer was incomplete, preserve the accurate supporting record and use the proper secure channel. If the eventual decision relies on an apparent factual error, the written reasoning and evidence list become the audit trail.
Yeah, keep the same-day note with the records you used and the receipt for anything later submitted. When the decision arrives, compare the condition with the evidence considered. Then compare the stated reasons. Do not assume the examiner's call controls every outcome, and do not file something new merely because the call felt strange. Read the decision first, then choose the response that fits the written problem.
Record it, preserve it, compare it.
Right, if the later decision accurately describes the evidence but reaches a result you disagree with, read the review options and deadlines in that notice. If it misstates a material fact, identify the exact sentence and the record that corrects it. Different written problems call for different responses.
The strongest preparation is modest. 5 accurate answers, 1 contemporaneous note, and records that support the story. That combination gives later reviewers something coherent to evaluate.
Winnable, when the record carries the fact, not the guess.
Like and subscribe for more claim stage audits built from current VA sources. Which of your 5 answers would be hardest to give accurately on an unexpected call? Keep the note beside the record and we will see you in the next one.